Welcome to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson at the Culinary Institute of Canada. Today I have a guest chef, Chef Austin Clement, Programs Manager of Hospitality and Culinary Arts Programs here at the college. Welcome, Austin.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, it's been a while since we were in the kitchen together. You've been outside doing some stuff. What have you been up to these days?
Oh, I do some cooking now and then for sure, but it is nice to be back in the kitchen. But between managing the programs here at the Culinary Institute and a restaurant in Georgetown as well as writing a book, we've had a busy couple of years for sure.
Yeah. So you've done a cookbook. You've got Clam Diggers out in Georgetown.
I'm a partner of Clam Diggers, yeah.
Yeah. And what's that kind of?
What does it entail?
Yeah.
Well, it is quite honestly, it's really where I go to relax. It's a seafood restaurant, Eastern Prince Edward Island, that focuses on quality seafood, and it's just nice sometimes to leave the busyness of life and go out and cook for a change. So I really enjoy going there and just relaxing and cooking the odd night for dinner, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
So you've done a cookbook since we've been here with a couple of the chefs, Jeff.
Yep, Jeff McCourt, who also was an instructor here at one time, and Alan Williams, who's a research and development chef that is in our CSK. About 3 years ago, the three of us got together, and with the help of the Chef Association, who provided some recipes, just wrote some of the food stories of Prince Edward Island, just from our childhood and from our growing up as chefs, and just illustrating how fantastic the products are at Prince Edward Island.
Awesome. So we're going to take a couple of recipes out of that book today. We're going to do...
Well, the chowder is not exactly the same as that recipe. What is an adaptation of what that recipe was. It's actually a recipe that it's a 5-time winner of the PI Shellfish
Festival,
as well as the international as well. So it's one of those bulletproof recipes that you want to share with everybody. So it's not quite the same as the book, but it is very similar.
I think my chowder's gone down to this one a couple times.
I think that perhaps you've copied this one a few times. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start with the chowder.
Yes, and then we'll start by putting some butter into the pan.
Spoons.
Yep, I like to use butter instead of oil because it has an awful lot more flavor than oil.
Okay.
In this case, for sure.
You don't want the pot too hot because you don't want to burn the butter. You just want to have it foaming and get that nuttiness.
Yep, just a medium heat.
Okay.
Once that starts to melt a little bit,
so how much butter did you use there?
That's about a half a cup or so.
Half a cup.
Thereabouts, yeah, or a quarter of a pound. There's 2 cups in a pound.
Yeah.
We just want that to sort of start to bubble a little bit.
Okay.
And as it comes up to temperature, we're just going to add in our flavor builders. So we're going to start by adding in our onions, let them start to sweat a little bit. And then from there, we'll add in some of our celery, and then our flour. Let that sort of, the flour cook to what's called a blonde roux. Just a little bit of color, but not too much color because we have a cream soup.
Okay.
If you were going to thicken something that was going to have a dark color, for stew, for example, then you can cook that roux a bit more to create more flavor. But because we're going to have a finished product that's white, we don't want to add any flavor to that.
So we're a nice light roux, but what are we referring to when we talk about a roux? What are we?
Roux is generally equal parts of fat and flour.
So it doesn't have to be butter. It could be.
Doesn't have to be. In this case, the fat will be flour.
Chicken fat, beef fat, if depending on what you're thickening and what you're cooking.
Yeah. So if you're going to do a stew, then you would use beef fat, some lard and whatnot. If you're going to use, in this case, the fat will be the butter, and of course the thickening agent is the flour.
Okay. Also,
instead of traditionally, it would normally be equal parts. But in this case, because I don't want the chowder to be too thick or too gluey, because it does contain the flour is the thickening agent.
Yeah.
And the more flour I put in, the longer it will take for it to cook out, and the more gluey it would become. So in this case, it's probably about maybe 2 parts butter and 1 part flour.
Okay. Roughly. So mostly it's 1-to-1.
Right.
But depending on, we're one a little bit lighter, just as a binding agent more than a thickener.
Exactly.
So to speak. So we're just going to go with 2-to-1.
Sure.
Okay. Great, and so we get the onions in there sweating. So we don't want any caramelization on the vegetables at all.
No,
we just want the natural flavors to come in.
And that's the difference between sweating and sautéing, is that you're maintaining a temperature that's hot enough to slowly cook the vegetables so that they're translucent, as opposed to sautéing, which is a higher temperature, where it's going to add color and caramelization to the vegetables. We don't want that because it'll contribute to the color of the chowder when it's finished. Just under a minute or so there.
All right. So we're going to add that and that. Then at what point do we add the potatoes? And what do you got going on here on the cutting board?
Well, again, it's all the process we're going through right now is building flavor.
Yep.
So by doing the onions and the celery, obviously we're imparting those flavors into the broth.
Okay.
But the second part is what we're going to call a sachet, which is really the spice ingredients. And it can change from chowder to chowder.
Mhm.
You know, in my case, I have a little bit of bay leaf, some star anise, some black pepper, and some parsley stems. You know, if you were not fond of that sort of licoricey flavor,
Yeah.
then you wouldn't have to put the star anise in.
Okay.
It's just a personal.
It's kind of a
it's personal-
strong spice flavor.
Yeah, and that's why I'm putting into a pouch, which is a sachet.
Yeah.
It's a very traditional French way of contributing flavor, but having the ability to remove it when you want
Whenever
to.
you get the flavor out of it.
Yeah, so I just put those spices into a simple cheesecloth.
Yeah.
Just going to tie.
It keeps it all contained, so it's not all
Yeah.
loose flying around the chowder.
That's right. And that way, when I choose, now in this case, it's a very short period of time. But for example, if you're making a stock or you're making something that was on the stove a little bit longer, then the purpose for that long string
So you can find
is
it.
you can pull it out. You're not fishing around with a spoon and whatnot. So
Okay.
later on, when we set it off to simmer, we'll actually put the sachet in.
Okay.
Okay, so that's just about getting there.
All right. So we're just looking for translucent, or just
Yeah.
until the rawness is gone out of the celery and the onions.
Yeah, if you look closer, you can see there's lots of nice green color there, but
Yeah.
it's not quite transparent. It doesn't mean it's see-through. It just means that around the edges you can start to see a little bit of an opaque color, opaque color to it.
Okay.
For sure. Okay, we're also going to add our flour.
So we're gonna add our flour in a little bit, and just like you said, 2 to 1.
Roughly
2 parts
1.
fat to the 1 part flour.
Right,
Just-
I never add it all at once.
Yeah, and you want to cook the raw flour out. You don't want to have that flour taste in
Exactly.
there, and you also don't want to toast the flour so you don't get that
That's right.
brown color. You want to keep it nice and clear, nice and white, pale.
And that's why I didn't add it all at once. I really added it so that I could judge how much more the liquid could hold
Okay.
before it starts to color. Otherwise, if you put too much in, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're starting to brown your flour because there's not enough moisture to keep it from browning.
So the flour kind of just absorbs
Right.
the excess fluid or fat from the butter.
Yes. And if you actually look, you can see as you're stirring it, you'll see that it naturally goes to the outside of the pot.
Okay.
Right, which is great because then what happens, it leaves enough space in there for you to add whatever your liquid is.
Okay.
And in this case, this is a fish stock.
Yep.
It's actually the liquid that we had poached the seafood, primarily the haddock, and we use some of the water from the mussels
Okay.
to create the flavor in here
Okay.
that will then be imparted to the chowder.
So all the flavors of the fish that we're putting into the chowder have contributed to the fish stock that
Exactly.
we're using as the base.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, we just want to add up about half of it in at once.
Okay.
I just want that to absorb some of that heat. If I put it all in at once, it's going to tend to get a little bit lumpy, and we don't want that.
Okay.
So I'm just letting the...
So just enough liquid in there to dilute the.
Right, exactly. Once
Okay.
it starts to sort of disperse from the flour,
Okay.
and then I can go ahead and...
Add the rest.
That's right, yeah.
So once you get all the fish stock in there, then is that the point where we add the potatoes?
Yeah, we add the potatoes in, we put our sachet in.
And then we let that come to a boil, and we
Exactly.
bring that to the point of.
It'll start to simmer.
Okay.
And you don't want to boil it as such. I mean, if you boil it too much of your volume will be lost for evaporation.
Okay.
But I do want to bring it to a simmer. I'll add my potatoes in.
Okay.
You don't need quite that many potatoes, I don't think.
It's your chowder, man.
That'll be enough. Yeah, that's right. There's about probably 1.5 pounds of potatoes there, but
Okay.
Depending on whether you want the predominant ingredients in your mouth to be potatoes or seafood,
Okay.
you can balance more or less potatoes. In order for it to qualify for chowder, it has to have
Has to have
potatoes in it.
potatoes.
So that's right.
Okay. So do we add the sachet
Sure do.
now, or we add that after?
Nope,
And
we'll
we're
add
gonna
it
let
now.
this come to a simmer, and then we're gonna let the potatoes cook, and then we're gonna go. Okay, so right now we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna let the chowder come up to a simmer. We're gonna add the seafood, and then we'll make some. What else we make it, Jeff?
Make a butternut squash soup.
Okay, we'll be right back.
You can never really be ready for the news that it's not an ear infection anymore, that it's cancer.
The Make-A-Wish Foundation gives hope, strength, and joy by granting magical wishes to children with life-threatening medical conditions.
Someone came in from Make-A-Wish Foundation and they told us we were gonna get a wish. Annabelle can play soccer and she can do ballet. Everything seems so much bigger and better. Help us make a wish for a happy ending.
This portion of Kitchen Uncovered has been brought to you by the Culinary Institute of Canada. For more information on their programs, you can visit hollandcollege.com.
make our children happier? How do we make them healthier, stronger, and more confident? We bring back play. At Participaction, we say, dust off the bike helmets and revive hide and seek. Let's give them 60 minutes a day of the physical activity that kept us happy and healthy when we were kids. Let's bring back play. Participaction. Let's get moving.
Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson of the Culinary Institute of Canada, here today with Chef Austin Clement. Today we're making seafood chowder and squash soup. So far we've got the chowder on the go.
It is, it's simmering. We just moved it over out of the way, so it needs its own little bit of time to...
So we've sweat off the onions and the celery. We've added the sachet and the fish stock.
Yep.
We got the potatoes in there. We're just waiting them to come to just cooked.
Yeah, it takes about 15 minutes. So
We slid that over to a burner on the side. So now we're going to make some squash soup.
Yeah, so it's not all that different, quite honestly, from making a chowder, but if you remember, we talked about building flavor.
Yep.
So last time we sweat the onions and the celery for that recipe there without any color. Well, it's a little bit different with this one because we do want to, squash is kind of a mellow flavor, so we want to have a little bit of backwards flavor, so we use some bold flavors with it.
Okay. And what kind of squash are we using today?
This is a butternut squash. It's sort of a winter or a fall squash. It's great for this recipe, and the ratio of potato and squash is appropriate for a squash like this. It has a fairly strong starch content.
Okay.
If it was summertime, same method. You could use a zucchini, for example. We all know that once the zucchini starts to come on stream, that it almost takes over our garden. So often we'll find these giant zucchinis and wonder what we're going to do with them. So you could use zucchini in this recipe instead, although it has a lower starch content and a much higher moisture content. So you would increase your potatoes.
Okay.
Or use the wood starch. I like this recipe because there's no starch in it, so it's gluten-free.
Self-thickening. And
yeah, exactly.
Don't have to add the roux that we had in the seafood chowder.
Right. The thickening comes from the puree of the squash and the starch that's in the potato.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So unlike using butter in the last recipe, we'll use a bit of olive oil.
Okay.
And if you don't have olive oil, go ahead and use a nice canola oil, for example. Okay.
All right. And again, we're using a hot pan.
We are, and these are the onions that'll build some of that caramelization, some of that flavor.
Okay. Wooden spoon to stir.
Yeah. Thank you.
So a little bit of caramelization on this one, where we're just sweating in the chowder. We want a little bit of color on the onions.
All right. We
Here
want
in
them
the
to start
squash
to,
soup.
if you smell that, you can kind of smell a little bit of a nuttiness to it.
Yeah.
Kind of sort of a caramelization of the sugars.
Yeah.
And if you look closely at them, I don't know if you can see that or not. You can sort of see, it's just a
Starting
little
to
bit of
color a
color
little
starting
bit.
to happen there, yeah. So another
A
minute
little
or
bit
so.
of caramelization going on.
Yeah, it kind of adds a little bit of depth of flavor, if you will.
So that's almost like pan roasting a little bit.
Well, in a way, yeah. In a way, yeah. This is the main body of the flavor.
Okay.
We're going to have, this is a red Thai curry,
Okay.
which obviously is very strong flavors. If you didn't like the Thai aspect of things, something a little bit more mellow or more traditional flavor, you could go with the Madras or an Indian curry.
Okay, a
Has
little
more
lighter,
of
little,
kind of a
not
smoother,
as much heat.
Yeah, kind of a smoother curry flavor. I like the red Thai. Either one works very well, but I like the red Thai.
Okay.
Give that a quick stir.
So you mix that right into the onions a little bit. Let that toast a little bit as well, or caramelize in the pan.
That's right. Just want the flavor down. What you can't taste out there, or smell out there, is just the smell of what we
Smell of the onions and the curry going.
Just
Filling the
beautiful.
kitchen with,
Yeah. So now we've got some good heat still built in the pan.
Yep.
I want to add into the mix the squash.
Okay.
Now, two things to remember here is time is important, because if you do add all your squash at once and you don't stir it,
Okay.
then the starch is going to start to stick to the pan. So
Right.
you want to make sure
You don't want it to burn or cause that fond on the pan necessarily. You just want to. Okay.
Exactly. And I'm just going to put some potato. Oh. Just an eye of left in with the potatoes.
Good eye.
Very well, yeah. Good
eye.
Yeah. That's just going to help with some of the thickening
Okay.
that we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's going to help thicken and soak up some of the extra moisture from the squash, because it's got starch content, but not necessarily enough. And
That's
if we were using summer squash, would be much more watery, so we need a bigger ratio of potatoes.
Right. So if you need more starch and you don't want to add this type of squash, you'd have to add the starch content. That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Now to this, we use this, obviously fish stock for the chowder, but in this case,
Chicken stock?
we're going to use some chicken stock.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't want to have, you want it to be completely vegetarian, then you could use a vegetable stock
Okay.
as well.
So you don't need the meat-based product. You could
Right.
use.
Voila.
Okay.
Okay. Give that a quick stir.
Cool things down a little bit.
I'm just making sure that all the bits on the bottom of the pan that were there from the caramelization are going to
Not
lift
on the
off
bottom.
and get into the broth and dissolve nicely.
Yeah.
And then, like the chowder,
Yeah.
we're going to have to let that sit for about 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay, so we've got the squash soup on.
Yep.
We're going to let that come up to a simmer so it cooks up.
Yep. Takes about 15 minutes or so for the potatoes and the squash to cook. While that's happening, I'd like to talk a little bit about the seafood that we're going to put in the chowder later on.
Okay.
Because there's a couple of key points that are important when you're doing seafood for a chowder. I want to make sure we capture.
Okay.
Let's put some gloves on here pretty quickly.
You sure handling seafood? I can just kind of.
Yep. Just add one more there if you don't mind.
You want two? Two hands?
Well, I'll be cracking. Pulling the lobster apart, so
Okay.
that'll be good.
I'm just going to turn this down a little bit
Sure.
so it's a simmer.
So what we've put into the chowder, Andrew, for seafood in this case is just some mussels, and we simply steamed them off.
Okay.
In this case, we didn't have any real need to add any more flavor, so we just use a bit of water.
Yeah.
In a pot, and when you cook your mussels, you really don't have to put a lot of water in. There's a lot of water inside the
water
mussel
in them,
itself,
yeah.
right? So just a quarter inch
Just
or
enough
half
to
inch
create some
to the bottom,
steam?
right?
Just
And
to
that
get
was about 3 or 4 pounds. Gave us that much meat.
Okay.
There's about 20 or 22 mussels in a pound, so there's probably 300 mussels there, believe it or not. So so we have that all ready to go. We also have some snow crab that we got here as well.
Okay.
It came in the form of our legs, and we simply cracked it open,
Okay.
pulled the meat out. It's a little more stringy
Right.
than lobster is,
Yeah.
so later on it's important when we put that into the mix. We also have some South Shore lobster,
Okay.
which is important.
South Shore lobster?
Just off of Montague, off Boaton Island. Very important, knowing the origin of your seafood, especially lobster on this island.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be an opportunity for us to talk about the lobster because there's a little bit different preparation for that.
Okay.
As well as the haddock that we have here as well.
Okay. Because you see a haddock in a lot of recipes, and people just kind of fire it in and whatever. So you've got a special little technique that we use.
Well, it's not so much technique; it's just some critical points when you're dealing with seafood. Is what people tend to do is they tend to put the white fish or whatever fish content in too small of pieces, and then
Okay.
they stir it and stir it and stir it, and it breaks it up, and it's not very nice.
Right.
So we actually poached this to make the fish stock earlier.
Right.
We left bigger, larger pieces of it.
Yeah.
That way that when we actually put it into the chowder, it cooks the rest of the way. As we stir, that
breaks
large
up
piece
into
will
its
break
nice-
off into 5 or 6 pieces. So if you look
Okay.
closer, you can see how it's just
just kind
cooked
of-
enough
Yeah.
that it's almost starting to come apart, but not quite there. I want to maintain that texture until we get
Okay.
there. So later on, it'll be
and all the flavor from the pre-cooking goes into the stock for the chowder.
Right,
Which builds your
right.
flavor.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the lobster, this is a male lobster, we just simply cooked about 6 minutes, which is not fully cooked.
Okay.
We just wanted to make sure that we had it so it held its shape, so we can handle it.
Okay.
But it didn't actually be cooked completely.
So it's about half cooked because 12
Right.
minute lobster is a cooked lobster. So you've done it for about
about
6.5
halfway.
minutes. So
Yeah, and the reason for that is
just
that
half cooked.
again we don't want it to lose its flavor
Okay.
completely,
Okay.
and be all tough and we're not
So-
from being overcooked.
Right. So the mussels are steamed off. The crab meat is picked off. The haddock and the lobster are part cooked, but not fully cooked. But
Yep.
they'll finish cooking in the chowder. And right now we're going to go for a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to finish off some seafood chowder and squash soup.
Great.
My mom and dad
Everybody's too busy.
Everybody's too busy.
Everybody's too busy.
I don't like school.
I'm failing.
I really hate
I
bullies.
get more exercise from bullies.
She has a secret.
Everybody at school
She
knows.
has a secret. Really
Nobody
sucks.
listens.
I don't like school.
Well, I have to choose.
It's my dad.
I'm terrified. I hate being
Terrified.
bullied.
Everybody's
This
too busy. Sucks.
Got a problem that won't shut up? Let's talk. Kids Help Phone. Anonymous, confidential, 24/7.
What does it take to make our children happier? How do we make them healthier, stronger, and more confident? We bring back play. At Participaction, we say, dust off the bike helmets and revive hide and seek. Let's give them 60 minutes a day of the physical activity that kept us happy and healthy when we were kids. Let's bring back play. Participation. Let's get moving.
You can never really be ready for the news that it's not an ear infection anymore, that it's cancer.
The Make-A-Wish Foundation gives hope, strength, and joy by granting magical wishes to children with life-threatening medical conditions.
Someone came in from Make-A-Wish Foundation and they told us we were gonna get a wish. Annabelle can play soccer and she can do ballet. Everything seems so much bigger and better. Help us make a wish for a happy ending.
And welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. Here today with Chef Austin Clement. Today we're doing seafood chowder and squash soup. So we've got the squash on. We've got our chowder's been simmering and chilling for 20 minutes or so now. We've got the squash on the go. So now we're going to seafood.
All right.
What's up?
Well, we're going to throw the haddock in first. And if you remember, we talked about the haddock was only cooked about halfway. So I'm putting it in.
So you're putting the
whole
whole
pieces,
fillets in so that as it cooks up, it starts to break up. That way you still have some nice presentation of the haddock in the chowder.
Right. It'll actually finish cooking the rest of the way, just in the amount of time that the other seafood is heated all the way through.
Okay.
Right. Before I start to load things completely with seafood, I want to remove the sachet.
Okay.
Which just
So we've got all the flavor out of it that we now
That's right.
that
So
we can do, right?
Just want to let that unwind, let it drip away. Okay.
All done.
And then from that, we're going to go ahead and put in our mussels.
Okay. Okay. So the mussels that we cooked ahead of time, we steamed them off, and we've saved the juice, put that in our fish stock, along with the poaching liquid for the haddock.
Yep.
And now we've got the mussel meat that we picked out of the shells. We've got some lobster.
Some lobster.
South Shore lobster.
Always from the South Shore.
Always from the South Shore.
Yep. And then to this, we're going to add some of that scalded cream that's on the stove. Andrew, if you want to grab that.
Yeah. Some, a little bit right here.
Yep.
You just say when.
That's perfect right there. Just gives us a little bit more.
I think you forgot.
Can you smell that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Beautiful. And we're just going to let that come up to a simmer again.
Okay.
Just going to put this in. One last. I just wanted, before I put the crab meat in, I wanted to stir that.
Okay. Mix it all up.
Yep. Rest that lobster we cut up earlier.
No shy on seafood, is there?
Nope. Lots of seafood in there.
Okay, so
you
we're
can
going to
have a
remove the cutting board from the.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's just going to finish the rest of the way, just
So
naturally.
just let that all come up to temperature. The seafood will heat up. The lobsters are cooked for 6 minutes, so they're not cooked fully, but now they'll finish cooking in the meat and the haddock and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
All the flavors will blend together.
You got it.
Okay.
So next,
next?
we're going to do the squash soup,
Okay.
which is a puree soup.
So it's puree. So we've got the
That's right.
squash in there with the curry, Thai curry. So a little bit of extra heat in there, the chicken stock, and some potatoes.
The ladle over there.
Ladle. Chef.
I'm just going to, before I start actually, I'm just going to take out just a few pieces of the squash to be garnished later, because
Okay, so you don't puree the whole thing up.
right,
You got
when we
some
go to
whole
the plate,
pieces
you want to
go
have
with-
some texture.
Okay. Lay that in there. So you could do this in a KitchenAid blender. Is probably the slickest way, right?
I find that a blender works best. If you didn't have a blender like this, if you have an immersion blender, or what we call a thunder stick,
Okay.
then that would be ideal as well.
Yeah.
And you'll see I'm only going about halfway up, Andrew, because
Soup is hot.
one of the most evil things created was a blender. So you have to respect its power by making sure you don't overload it. So I'm going to start off with a very low RPM and then work my way up.
Okay.
Okay, so that's pureed. I'm going to put a little bit more in.
Okay. Smell that soup.
Does this smell good?
Smells
Doesn't it?
great, yep. So you could do this ahead of time?
Oh, absolutely.
Soup you could
That's
make
good.
ahead of time?
That's
Or
good there.
the,
We'll leave the rest of it in there.
okay. Put that back over here.
One more shot on here.
So if you're doing that at home, you want to be careful you don't overload the blender because you got hot soup in there and it could build up pressure and blow at the top. So
That's right.
you want to be very careful. You got a firm grip on the top and an extra cloth so you don't burn your hands.
There. I'm just simply going to take that nice hot soup,
Put it back in the pot.
pour it into what's left in the pot. There's a few pieces of the squash left in there.
That can act as a garnish.
Right. It just sort of has a little bit more body to it that way. If you don't want any chunks whatsoever, you can go ahead and puree the whole thing if you like.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're just going to, just like we did with the other one, we're just going to add some of that scalded cream into that.
Okay. So scalded cream. So we just brought the cream up to temperature, just
Yep.
to the boiling point.
Yeah. That's good, Andrew.
Okay.
Put that back on the heat.
Okay, so we got the seafood chowder. We're gonna
Yep.
go to the plate.
Absolutely. Just want to make sure you get a really good amount of seafood here.
Yeah, you're not shying the seafood in that chowder.
No, it's a seafood chowder after all. A little bit more, I think, right there. We'll go right to the plate with that. That's another ladle there, Andrew.
Okay, yeah. So you're gonna do both.
Yeah, I think we'll just kind of
Squash
garnish
soup.
them up at the same time. Oh, you smell that?
Mmm,
That's
beautiful.
Okay. Just a very simple finish for the chowder. Fresh whole butter. By the time that gets to the table, that's going to be nicely melted.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of fresh dill just to finish the plate. Put some elegance there. We'll put a little bit in the soup here. We'll put a little bit of the leftover reserved squash that was
Just
there.
as a garnish in the
Just
center.
for some texture.
Mm-hmm.
One of our students, Shane Hilderman, made a nice roasted red pepper oil to this afternoon, so we'll put some in there in honor of him.
Beauty.
And a little bit of tarragon, and you got two simple soups that anybody can make at home.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chef.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
For more information on today's recipes, check out our website at kitchenuncovered.com. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson at the Culinary Institute of Canada. See you next time.